I like to start by introducing myself kind of like a college class, because that's the only way. I've been teaching a long time, and it's the way it kind of eases me into my presentation and what I'm going to do. So you need to know who I am before I start talking to you about what I do. Been married for 20 years with my wife. I have a 7-year-old at home who is in love with horses, and I was like, of all the sports you could pick, like, couldn't you pick something that didn't have a $200,000 piece of equipment that needs to be used? Like, there's basketball, there's hockey. Well, hockey's up there too, but I teach in Dobbs Ferry. I've done about 23 years now in Dobbs Ferry. I'm a triple ram. I spend a lot of time in Rhode Island. My wife is also a teacher. I teach. I come from a family of teachers. Yes. Turn it up. Where does it go? Yeah, that's fine. Is that better? Can you hear me better? It's about the same. Oh no, maybe I should talk louder. Is that better? Ah, okay. It's not the technology, it's the user, right? That's the case. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about authentic text and using it in read-alouds. And I spent a lot of time, most of my experience is in early elementary. It's the K-1-2. So I understand the importance and of learning if we look at the rope, learning all the word recognition. And I spent 15 years teaching kindergarten alone. I spent another 5 teaching, let's see if the math adds up in my head. I spent another 5 teaching 2nd grade, so I understand the importance. And then I went to 5th grade, and I was like, oh, wow, like a whole new world. I was like, I'm not doing cat, book, pat, right? And I could start using authentic text. And this is my 2nd year teaching 5th grade. And it's just been an eye-opener for me. So what I'm going to do today is show you what I do and tell you a little bit about the theory behind why I do it, and show you in particular a unit that we've developed for the 5th grade team around Esperanza Rising, which is one of my all-time favorite novels, even after 2 years. All right, so growing up with authentic text. I grew up, my father was a remedial high school English teacher when it was called remedial reading in New York City. And he would bring home, and I went through great pains to find the covers of the actual books that he would bring home to us. And I have an older sister, and he would bring these books home. One of my favorites was the Make Your Own Ending, where you get to flip. Only if we had that in real life, right? If we could just like keep flipping back until and make it something that we really wanted to, the way we really wanted it to end. But he would bring home the Make Your Own Endings. He'd bring home the Paul Zindel books, My Darling, My Hamburger. I'm really dating myself, by the way, by sharing these and the covers, but My Darling, My Hamburger books. And then he decided he was going to do a read aloud for us, for my sister and I, starting when I was in like 2nd grade. And he did Of Mice and Men. What? I'm like, Daddy, why did you do Of Mice and Men? But so the point is, and we also had at the same time, get feedback if I go over here. Where was my? I just had a couple of notes that I wanted to make sure that I covered with you. Oops. Here we go. So what my father was able to do with this is when he, every time I go near this guy, is this it? Okay, I'll put that over there. So what my father was doing is he was scaffolding for us. So every time we ran across a word of Mice and Men that we didn't understand, my father would explain it to us. He'd explain it without him, being the teacher that he would explain it in kid-friendly words to us. Every time there was a concept of something that was confusing to us, like Lenny, right? He would bring it to real world as something we knew. In our neighborhood around the corner, there was a home for people who were older, who were struggling, right? And they were neurologically divergent. They were neurodivergent. And he would talk about them and he'd say, well, Lenny is like, we had this guy, Ernie, who used to walk around. So he scaffolded us through these novels. And then we also had Encyclopedia Brown, when we went to Italy. Every year we went, then that's the actual one. Every year we went to Italy. I never went to Disney World. And I would say to my father, take me to Disney World. And he'd be like, I take you to Italy every year. But I mean, what do you know when you're in second grade? But I grew up using authentic text. Besides, I don't remember so much the decodables. They were there, and I'm sure I learned with them. I mean, I remember my phonics book. It was a blue book, and it had like a grid on the front of it, and it said phonics across the top. And I remember doing that. But I really remember the authentic text that I read with my dad and my family. So let's start by talking about what an authentic text is. An authentic text, according to the International Literary Association, authentic texts are used in everyday life, but not solely, excuse me, are mainly for the purpose of instruction. Okay, authentic texts are written for real world purposes and audiences to entertain, I love this, inform, explain, guide, document, or convince. In fact, authentic texts need not even be written words. And I think we forget about that in the classroom sometimes. They're audio files, virtual tours, speeches, blueprints, photos, video clips, and other non-written items that can be read or interpreted are also considered to be text. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the second part from my fifth graders. A lot. In fact, one of my kids had his Chromebook taken away because he learned how to hack the system at the school, and he was going on Fortnite during his free time. So they teach me everything I need to know about the second part of the technology part of it. So what are some of the benefits of using authentic text? Okay, when you use real world text in the ELA, it fosters authentic engagement and relevance for students. It promotes awareness and empathy through diverse perspectives and experiences. Think about what I learned about people who were different than I was from my father, right? And how he was able to make the connection for me between Lenny and between Ernie in the real world. Think about all the vocabulary that I learned from my father reading that book and supporting me with that book, okay? I use this in like I said, in Esperanza specifically, and I'm going to be more specific as I go through with you and we talk about how to use authentic text, but I've given you the definition. I've talked to you about how the benefits of using it. How do you select them, right? And we have a couple of them up here that we use specifically and that I use specifically in my classroom, okay? So when you select when you select an authentic text, you have to look for diversity. And again, it's just not ethnic diversity. Like I was saying, it's also diversity of format, so that there's video clips, there's maps, there's anything digital that you could possibly think of and use. That there's complexity, right? These three texts have very different complexities within the text and amongst the text, between them. Okay, and that it has relevance to students' lives and incorporates multilingual text, incorporating multilingual text to reflect the diversity of the classroom. So my classroom, I'm not in a super diverse district, I'll be honest, but I do have a significant amount of students who are immigrants, right? And when I say significant, I'm saying maybe 5% of my population that I'm dealing with. So when selecting this book in particular, Esperanza Rising, the connection that I've seen between the 4 or 5 students that I have spread over 2 ELA classes is that they've made a connection to something we've read. And those students and the ENL teacher that I work with have often said that this is the highlight of their year. And they ask to read it. Like they tell their siblings that are coming up from 4th grade, you're going to read this book next year to them. But also in diversity, meaning what type. So we were able to use this in a full unit. We start with what are human rights, and the youthhumanrights.org has wonderful, it's a pamphlet that we read with the children, and we spend time talking about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the background and the history, why it was created. We talk about Eleanor Roosevelt, and you're going to see as I speak I do have ADHD, but you're going to see that all the different diverse ways that you can go with it, and why I get so excited, and why I'm so excited just seeing and using authentic text for these 2 years. So I will tell you this: if you do decide what are human rights, do not show the video. I don't know if anyone has ever seen the video that goes with this. I showed it my first year without screening it, and it's terrible. Like, I don't mean boring, like it's like not appropriate. Like shows violence and stuff. And it was a learning moment for Doug. So because it was like one of those, what's that? And the kids are all standing there with her, and I'm like, scene. All right, and scene. So we also talked about kids at work. So we set the basis of using the authentic text of human rights pamphlets and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We brought it into Kids at Work. This is a wonderful book and a nonfiction read as well. And then finalizing, bringing all this prep work, right, carefully to bring us to reading Esperanza Rising, right? So it's kind of scaffolding, right? It's getting everything and leading up to the final authentic text that we had. Oops. All right, some teaching strategies. Scaffolding instruction to help support students in complex texts. This is so important, and only you, like Esther was saying, like, when do I stop doing that? When they're ready, right? Only you are going to know your students, and you're going to know the amount of scaffolding that they're going to need in your classroom. But there are some basic ideas, like giving a historical context. The Brain Pop Junior is wonderful in Brain Pop, giving the history of the Mexican-American War, the history of Mexican immigration to the United States. Also having these collaborative discussions, specifically literature circles. Now, literature circles are, I'm sorry, was that feedback in me? Oh. Literature circles in particular interest me, because my dissertation work, I kind of fell into literacy backwards. Most of my work and my research was about motivation and what motivates people to learn. And one of the things about literature circles, we're all taught in teacher training school, right? Put them in small groups, do a small group in cooperative learning groups. And cooperative learning is wonderful, but there's all sorts of, there's a certain amount of time and structure that you need to have in cooperative learning. So you really have to give roles for the literature circles. Is one of the things that over all the years has taught me. You have to assign specific roles, and you have to limit the time in it. But also giving them like note catchers for the historical context really helps. I'm a huge fan, as I'm going to talk, and some other people have heard me say, I'm a huge fan of Pear Deck. I don't know if everyone knows Pear Deck, and they shouldn't be giving a plug, but I've heard a lot of talk about immediate feedback in order to correct things, and Pear Deck is one of the best ways to do it. So the other component is an authentic assessment component, which authentic texts really lend themselves to that. Okay, a literary analysis and creative responses to evaluate understanding. It's providing constructive feedback to support students' growth as readers and writers. Now, the way that I've done this, and I've had a lot of success, is by using Pear Deck in 2 different ways. So Esperanza Rising has, there's a lot of proverbs in it. Does anyone not know it? Is everyone familiar with Esperanza Rising? Okay, good. I'm glad. That makes it a lot easier. There's a lot of proverbs, and there's a lot of figurative language. There's a lot of literary devices that are used. So for these more creative, authentic assessments and a literary analysis, they usually lend themselves. I divided the questions as in order to use them correctly into more deeper questions like these, right? That are asking literary responses, that are asking for figurative language, and then there's also really quick answer questions that are like entry ticket questions. So this enables you to immediately provide student feedback. So if they're answering this question incorrectly, you can type in on the other end to the students on Pear Deck, John, this is not correct. Please go look at page 42. This is not the way the literary device was used. So it becomes an authentic assessment. It works on a literary analysis, and it gives quick, immediate feedback to them for it. Connecting these to the real world, we were able to connect, linking these authentic texts like Esperanza Rising, like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights pamphlet, and like the Kids at Work. Linking them to real world issues makes connections to students' lives. We were able to pull in, like, for example, the Cesar Chavez story and the Dolores Huerta stories. And it encourages student voice and advocacy through this. One of the wonderful things that's happened over this unit, what better unit to teach and make authentic than what's happening with immigration right now? And this really drove, my students got really, really passionate about this. And to see them this year more than last year really jump on, there was a couple of things. They really jumped on women's rights. Like Dolores Huerta, she was known as Yes We Can, right? Everyone gave that slogan to Cesar Chavez. It was really her slogan. And it led to a really wonderful, several conversations about why did that happen? Why wasn't she given the credit for that slogan? And it also led to some of them wanted to write to local senators. They wanted to write to the mayor. Some of them wanted to write to the president about immigration. After having this, seeing the experience that Esperanza went through with her family, coming here, it really made a connection to them, and it really encouraged them to become analytic thinkers and to think outside of what was just happening by using this jump off point of an authentic text. So the first part is making sure that we're embracing authentic text, that we're enriching students' literacy skills. We're fostering cultural understanding, and we're encouraging a love for diverse literature, and we're empowering students as critical thinkers and creating global citizens. I was absolutely amazed at how using this text really motivated the students to reach outside their local communities, but also how they started, like, they wanted to know about, they wanted to know how the Universal Declaration of Human Rights were created. They wanted to talk about the UN. It just led in like 8 directions from this one part. So the question is, how do you use it? So, and how do read alouds fit into this? So I'm gonna ask you just for a second to think about the last time you remember as a child being your last read aloud, right? Or the read aloud to you that sticks in your head the most as a child. Think about who you were reading it with. Think about the book that you were reading. And lastly, think about the age. Think about how old you were when someone was reading that book to you or with you, okay? So this is the scary part, and don't throw stones. This is from Pam Allen, so don't throw any stones. This is from Pam Allen. This is from 2018 or 2019, and there is a huge drop in read alouds, huge drop in read alouds. In fact, this is where I hope I won't give you that. It peaks at age 5, and a majority of families read aloud 5 to 7 weeks before a child enters kindergarten. This percentage declines dramatically with each additional year of age, and it goes down to 7% by the time they're 12 to 14, right? So these authentic texts are a perfect opportunity for read alouds for them. It's a perfect opportunity in the classroom. Just as a refresh, what a read aloud is. Read aloud, think aloud, expert on Dr. Ness. A read aloud is an instructional practice where teachers, parents, and caregivers read aloud to children. The reader incorporates variations in pitch, tone, pace, volume, pauses, eye contact, questions, and comments to produce fluent and enjoyable delivery. just in case you didn't remember what a read aloud was. So if it's dropping, what are the benefits of doing this for students? Okay, it promotes fluency and comprehension. Again, thinking about the rope, right? I'm not saying the other part of the rope isn't fun, but this is kind of the more fun part for me. For it, it exposes students to diverse literary genres and cultivates a love for reading and encourage critical thinking and discussion, right? But how do you do that? So I use a format that has been very successful in doing it as a read aloud. First, I have them read the chapter by themselves to promote independent reading. Then we read the chapter together, chorally, right? And then they can read the chapter with a partner. And then they answer those questions that I was showing you, those literacy questions. Sometimes they want to work with, some children need to work with a partner, and some children can do it independently. It depends on the child. So again, how do you select read alouds? And this kind of dovetails with what we said about when you choose age appropriate and engaging texts, you select books that reflect diverse cultures, like we did up here, and you incorporate multicultural literature to promote inclusivity. So again, we had this really wonderful experience by doing this with Esperanza. Told you I could get it done. How do you use a read aloud? So again, the scaffolding comes in here. You use the think aloud and questioning to promote comprehension. And like I said, all joking aside, Dr. Ness really taught me how to do this correctly with students by pre-reading the book, picking out the juicy points, figuring out what you want to do, those higher order skills like predicting, visualizing, summarizing. You encourage active listening and participation with them with the small group work. You implement visual aids to enhance understanding. So to help several students, I can't click on the link here because it goes to something different, but I created a whole visual guide for Esperanza Rising. So it's the story told in pictures. So children can follow along and they can look at the pictures and follow the whole story of Esperanza as well. Oops. Vocabulary development is also great for read alouds. Read alouds are great for vocabulary development. This is the Freyer model, oldie but a goodie. You introduce the vocabulary through through the actual context, just like my father introduced a new vocabulary to us all through Of Mice and Men. It also encourages students in the authentic text while you're doing a read aloud to infer, and you can infer for them. You could model the skill for them. You could also use word maps and context clues to deepen understanding and teach them how to do that. You would talk briefly, Esther talked about using the cue analysis, so assessment and reflection. And again, informal assessment can be used to gauge comprehension. So for example, I said there's really quick, these are used as like entry tickets into it. You have students also reflect on the read aloud process where they tell you which books they like, so you can help choose new read alouds as you go forward. And using the reflections and their feedback to help you figure out what your next choice is going to be for them. This was, you said, just check me on time because you had said, sorry, what? Okay, all right. All right, so I will, I have about 5 minutes. You got my abridged version too today. Embrace read alouds. Incorporating read alouds in upper elementary classrooms is a powerful tool for enhancing literacy skills. It fosters a love for reading, it encourages critical thinking, and promotes inclusivity and diversity in literature. Again, so combining the two is kind of like what I described to you, the way we did it in the classroom. And now because I cut it, I forgot what I was going to say on this slide. And I'm pretty good about, I'm good about usually remembering my stuff, but I forgot what I was going to say on this slide and I had it. So the point is, and if I have to take it all the way to the back, authentic text can be used very well in read alouds in the upper elementary classroom.